Paul, thank you. I'm just going to ask three questions, and then we'll open it up to the group. First question, what do you want your legacy to be?
So, I don't think an individual legacy would be my intent, but here's how I'd answer that question. It'll take us about 10 years to rebuild the complex into the National Western Center. And the day that I turn the keys over of that place and this great event known as the National Western Stock Show, I want to turn it over to a group of board leaders and a president and CEO that are in a sustainable business model for the next 100 years. Because I'm about to sign a 100-year agreement with the City and County of Denver to keep the National Western Stock Show at I-70 and Brighton Boulevard, which I'm happy to do. But I have to do that knowing that we're going to be sustainable for the next 100 years in a business model. So my goal the next decade, get us in such a stable business model that I will go to sleep at night when I'm 70 years old and know that the National Western Stock Show is going to continue forever.
What was the biggest change for you in transitioning from the private sector, cutting-edge sports environment to a 501c3 that was founded in 1906?
Biggest change was communication and the decision-making tree. At Kroenke Sports, I'd sit in Mr. Kroenke's office and we'd make a decision. We want to buy this team, we want to do this organizationally, we just go do it. Here I have a board of directors. I'd never had a board of directors before in my 20 years before I came to National Western. I got a board of directors, I've got committees, I've got almost 20 committees that are off my nonprofit here, right? And each of them work on a little different thing. And I'd never had any committees. I had a staff, me, and we were charging, right? We couldn't wait to get going and tackle the things that were ahead of us. So that was a big change for me and really took me a year or two of adjustment to figure out how you effectively use a board and how you use all these committees, because they're not paid anything, they're volunteers. And they're not with you every day. So that was probably the biggest change.
Sometimes in business, people forget the human element story, the story that transformed a life, whether an employee or maybe somebody that won an award at the stock show or whatever it might be. Could you share a story that you know about that transformed somebody's life as it relates to the stock show and its operations?
Yeah, that actually, there's so many. The great thing about what I do is there's so many of those stories. From the kid this year that sold the Grand Champion steer, and God bless Kent Stevenson, he stepped up and bid $135,000 on a Grand Champion steer at the National Western Stock Show. And it's leaders like him that can see he's about to change the life of that kid forever, because that kid gets 75% of that winning bid. So that individual, 16-year-old girl actually this year, she gets 75% of $135,000. It immediately changed her life. She's going to Oklahoma State University, okay? We tried to get her at CSU, keep her in state. But Oklahoma State's a great agricultural college too. So to watch that occur across 98 kids, we do 98 kids a year that sell animals like that, okay? To watch the life-changing event that brings, the tears that are flowing from the kid, from the parents, even the kid that sells the animal that gets $10,000. You just funded $10,000 of that kid's college education, and he's coming back next year with another animal, and he might win 40 next year, okay? So those are the moments that I relish, and I know those people that buy animals at our junior auction really relish that moment, because you just changed that child's life forever and gave them an opportunity to attend college of their choice, and that's a big thing.
So I'm standing there listening to these numbers. When I sold my animals at the county fair, at Montrose County Fair, I was very happy if I got $400 or $500 for my animals. So in case any of you are wondering, that's how I started my commercial real estate career, and I wanted to spell that. It was like $400. But anyway, let's open it up to the crowd. What questions do we have? Yes? So the question is, given your level of discipline, how do you deal with mistakes, specifically those on an emotional level?
I'll tell you, that is a good growth opportunity for me, actually. No, I early on in my career, I did not handle mistakes, especially on my staff, very well, honestly. I'm not a hothead because I don't allow any company that I've worked with when I got to the highest level, I don't allow yelling in my office at any level. So I will not allow any of my managers to dress down their employees in a public environment. I'll allow them to speak pointedly, but I will not allow yelling in any meeting that I'm in because I'm creating a culture of success. And a culture of success does not have somebody profanity-laden yelling at an employee, okay? So first and foremost, that's who I am and that's who my managers have to be. But dealing with mistakes, I think especially with young employees, and my staff is pretty young, 24 to 33 years old predominantly, and they're just kind of growing into their career, right? So I think dealing with mistakes, especially ones that are, cause some sort of huge emotional reaction or so forth, is really for me to step in as president and CEO at my level and explain maybe what we could have done differently and talk about how we can change that going forward, but not to sit there and make the person feel like either that was the worst mistake of all time, what are you doing, right? But just to talk through that with them and try to make it so we do something better the next time.
Yes? How do you deal with the Generation X people?
Well, the Generation X is going to have to be a little more disciplined with me. So if I say the office hours are 8 a.m., Generation X got to be there at 8 a.m. With me, I'm always there at 7:45. So hard to walk by my office at 8:30, right? So listen, I haven't had any problem with the millennials, Generation X, any age group across, frankly, my company, because I set parameters for them. And I let them decide if they want to be successful or not, okay? And they choose. The people that I've fired, and I've fired a lot of people in my day. When I started at the National Western, I replaced 50% of the staff in the first 2.5 years, okay? Because I set parameters, and I told them where we were going, and I needed people that were as driven as me to get where we were going, because we were going to celebrate success together. But if to you rolling in at 10 in the morning was okay and leaving around 3:30 because traffic is bad is okay, then you're not going to make it, okay? You're not going to make it in the company that I'm in, because I expect you to be excellent. And if your work ethic is great, I would tell Generation X, then I'm going to nurture you, and so is my vice president level and my director level. They're going to nurture you to success. But if your work ethic's poor, then you fired yourself.
Yes?
So you talked about setting your goals as being the best at a certain job. You want to be the best at pivot table. How does that work when you're at the top of the company and you don't really have contemporaries or power structures for your products?
Great question. So the question is, you said that you set these goals to be the best at whatever you're doing, and when you're at the top of an organization, how do you set those goals, specifically when you may not have any peers around you to do so?
So although I don't have any peers in Denver, Colorado, I do have peers across the country. The president of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, doing 2.4 million attendees a year. That's pretty good. I can learn something from that person. So really what I try to do is share best practices at high levels with people that are in my business. Like I get together with that group every year for a brainstorm. San Antonio, Houston, Fort Worth, Calgary. Those are some of the biggest and best rodeos and livestock shows in the country. So I really try to learn from them. I'm a sponge. I'm a sponge for anybody in this room, frankly, because if I sat with you all and just talk to you about things that you've learned in your life, I'm going to pick up one or two things that I will use from each one of you, okay? So I'm a huge sponge of trying to figure out best practices. And so really to be the best at the National Western or a livestock show and rodeo, I'm measuring myself against competitors in other parts of the country.
Right? One over here. You're sitting down, so I couldn't see you as well, so sorry. Wow, I haven't heard that one. That's interesting. The question is, I've heard a rumor that you're not supposed to take down your Christmas lights until the stock show is over. Is that true?
I'll tell you what, the book that we refer to as the Bible of Livestock Shows is a book that was written in about 1965. It's called 10 Days in January. And that book is about the history and the start of the National Western Stock Show. And so, two things to point out in that book. Number one, back in 1909, the tradition started that you are not to take down your Christmas lights until after the National Western Stock Show. Started in 1909. The other thing that started right then was the cowboys didn't have any place to come to town and be in a hotel because there weren't enough of them. So the cowboys would come, and our president, CEO, and the board members would walk around to houses around our complex, knock on the doors and ask if the cowboys could come stay with them for a few days. And people took them in. It was amazing. So anyway, but you are 100% right on keep those Christmas lights up.
The Watson household is kind of like the Clampett, so we just kind of keep them up all year. So I guess we're keeping up the the tradition. But anyway, yes, and we'll get back there in 1 second. Yes. Yes, sorry.
You mentioned that you were rebuilding the next 10 years, which is about for 100 years. Can you talk about your vision moving forward?
So the question is, what is your vision for the National Western Stock Show for the next 100 years, being that you're about ready to embark upon that?
So the great voters of Denver in November of 2015 passed a referendum 2C that provided $856 million to redevelop the area around the National Western Stock Show complex into something different than it is today. And then the legislature came in with another $250. So we've got about $1.2 billion approved to redevelop all of our buildings into state-of-the-art buildings that instead of driving, right now, as you heard, we drive $100 million a year in economic impact. The forecasts are showing more than $230 million a year will be driven by the new National Western Center, okay? So what the vision is to become the global destination for agricultural heritage and innovation. So we have partnered with Colorado State University, and because of that partnership, we can do educational programs year-round. We can, if you can imagine, and we would have different things with CSU based on grade level, but we might have something on site for the kids that are being bussed in that are 1st to 3rd grade. We might have them playing in the dirt and showing them how to plant seeds that actually sprout up and become corn one day, okay? Maybe for the senior in high school that might be thinking about being a vet, we would have them come through our vet center that's operated by CSU and maybe watch a live operation on a horse, okay? We can do all of that at the National Western Center, in addition to growing the National Western Stock Show and putting us in a sustainable business model for the next 100 years. Because today I've got $100 million to deferred maintenance on our buildings, okay? We can't overcome that. We're just surviving until the National Western Center buildings come up, and we can have a great rodeo building, great trade show building, great livestock, great equestrian. In fact, our equestrian center and the National Western Center, when it's done, will be the marquee equestrian center in the world. There will be nothing else like it. And we will be driving shows that have 3,000 to 4,000 horses and come stay in our cities for 3 weeks at a time, and they're staying in the Brown Palace, okay? These are not people that are staying at Motel 6. So the economic impact of those shows is massive, okay? So we will become, again, global destination for agricultural heritage and innovation, year-round agricultural education. We're going to become the country music capital of the West because we're going to have venues that can play to all of the artists in Nashville that are skipping Denver and heading from Nashville to LA can stop over here and play at the country music capital of the West, known as the National Western Center. So that's what we'll become.
Let's finish up with 2 questions. You had one back here?
So you said that you generate $100 million annually through the stock show. What of that are you putting towards the community and helping underprivileged youth?
So the question is, you say that you generate $100 million of impact. How much of that is going to the community to help support underprivileged youth?
So when you hear that we're generating $100 million of economic impact, I want to make sure you understand what that means. That means that during the 16 days of show, the gas stations, the restaurants, they're the $100 million of economic impact. Remember, I'm a show that generates $23 million a year, okay? And cash flow is $2.6 million. So what we're doing for underprivileged youth and so forth is we're supporting those scholarship students, okay? So that's our main focus as the National Western Stock Show, the preservation of the Western way of life, great entertainment, but supporting those 100 students that couldn't otherwise go to school at these universities. And then we would hope that the economic impact we're kicking off here in the city results in the individuals that are getting their pockets lined in the hotels and in the rent-a-car places and in all the things for all of our states and countries visiting. We hope they're using that economic impact to further develop society.
Right. Let's take one last question over here. Yes.
So you talked about the next generation millennials. I'm wondering if you have any advice for those who are entering and interviewing, they're already going to be profiled as a millennial, so what are some things you can tell them so they're not profiled that way?
Yeah. So for those who may be profiled as a millennial and they're going through interviews, what would your advice be to have them address that maybe in a positive way in those interviews?
Well, the first thing I'd do is I wouldn't even have that in my mind as I was heading into the interview, number one, because I don't have it in my mind as the person interviewing you or anyone else that's a millennial or Gen X or whatever. All I care about is 2 things. One, that you got a degree, okay? I care about that. Not every company cares whether people have a degree, but a degree tells me you had to fight. You had to fight through the difficulties of college, okay, and rise above all your friends partying and actually get a degree. I don't really care what your degree was. Doesn't matter to me. If I'm interviewing you for a position that you're going to grow in and learn in. So I never have race, color, age, any of those factors are in my mind when I'm interviewing, nor had they been from Kroenke Sports forward. All I care about is when you come into that interview, you're looking me in the eye, okay? You're pleasant, you're smart, you're answering my questions in a concise manner, and you're a good communicator. I care about those things because I can take that with my managers and my skill set. And as long as you're a hard worker, if you can do all those things, we can make you into something great because you're willing to learn, okay? So the one question I would answer if I was you in an interview setting when somebody says, "Why should we hire you?" I would say, "Because I'm willing to learn, and I will never let you down," okay? Those are things that I never hear, but if I heard that, I would get up and hire that person on the spot, okay? So maybe that doesn't work for everybody, but it would if you were interviewing with me.
Let's give Paul a round of applause.